Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third-world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Today, we're joined by Bill Williams, an award-winning journalist, photographer, and humorist. With a diverse career spanning film, television, journalism, and finance, Bill has spent over 2 decades sharing daily doses of humor through his Thought of the Day emails. His latest book, 20 Years of Internet Humor, Volume 1, compiles these anecdotes, offering readers a delightful journey through years of wit and wisdom. And I can testify after going through the book, it is funny. It is really funny. Bill, how are you?
I am great, Gerald. Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, I know when we first met and we talked about coming on the podcast and I saw the title, I thought, well, how's that going to work? And then as I listened to you and we talked and then I read through the book, I was like, this has everything to do with being productive. Because if you're productive and you're miserable, then what good is that, right?
Let me put it this way. If you're miserable, you probably won't be productive.
Exactly. And so, humor does something to us. It produces all of these positive neurochemicals. It brightens our day. It makes us smile. And so your book did all of that for me and more. So before we get into the book and some of the questions I have for you, let me ask you this. What is your favorite style of music?
Well, I don't have a favorite style of music, but I would have to list about 3 or 4.
Okay, go ahead.
And none of them are current.
That's okay.
Start off with classical, okay? Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor will set me off anytime I hear it.
Gotcha.
Okay? And if you hear some dogs barking in the background, I'm babysitting 2 grand dogs, and they heard something outside.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
We're good so far. We're all good, but they're welcome to join as well.
Then the second is jazz. Okay. Dave Brubeck is just an absolute favorite of mine. And not just that style, but, the big band, because I used to play professionally in a big band group in Washington, D.C.
Oh, what'd you play?
Trombone and low brass.
Oh, mercy. You didn't even list any of that in your bio.
Well, I only had 6 pages to work with.
That's a very important note to play, right?
Okay.
It's really awesome.
And then folk music. Okay. I don't know if I had mentioned this either, but a good friend of mine, Johnny Dutchendorf.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah. He recorded a song called Take Me Home Country Roads after he changed his name to John Denver.
There you go.
Okay. John and I went to school together.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. That amazing. So you grew up with John Denver and were
No, not that far, just college. Both his dad and my dad were sergeants in the Air Force.
Okay.
We both moved around all over the place. And
Gotcha.
I met John in Air Force ROTC, of all things.
Oh, wow.
At Texas Tech. You would never imagine that.
I know.
Okay.
Small world.
Yes, indeed.
Small world.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of music around campus, but just by himself with guitar. And
right.
We were sitting in the Union one day, and he said, I think I'm going to drop out of school. And I said, John, go ahead, finish the degree. It'll be the best thing you could ever do. And he said, no, I heard the Chad Mitchell Trio was looking for somebody to take one of their places, and I think I'll go out and apply. And I told him, get your degree. And that is about probably the worst advice I've ever given anybody.
So what did he do? Did he get his degree, or did he join the quartet?
No, he went out and joined the Mitchell Trio. And then went out off on his own, and the rest is history.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, listen, obviously you've not done too bad for yourself. You've had a really stellar career in film and journalism, and then in finance as well, and in television. So what do you think has made you so successful throughout your career? And obviously, I think this discipline of communicating in a way that touches people's hearts probably is a big part of that.
I'd like to think so, but one of the biggest things that I can say I have had, and what I advise anybody to do, is be adaptable. Because things change. And when things change, you need to change with them. And if you're really lucky, you can see the change coming and change before the change gets there, and you're ready for it.
That's really, really important, especially in these times with AI and all the different things that are going on socially and politically and every other kind of that they're going on. We have to be adaptable and adjust and actually look around the corner of life to make sure we see what's coming at us.
We never really know. And as you mentioned, I spent a bunch of years in television and radio and film. I get a bunch of awards on my wall for documentaries that I've done.
Okay.
And I'm not in that anymore. And the reason being is change.
Right.
Back in the 90s, the early 90s, guess what? Kodak went out of business, for God's sakes.
We got to change.
And I loved working in the darkroom. And all the cameras suddenly were changing. They weren't using film. They were using these weird electrons.
Right.
And I said, I don't think I want to do that. I want to change and do something different. It's embarrassing because I used to write a lot of magazine articles for technical photography and studio photography and the photography magazines. And the editors were counting on me once a year to do an entire issue on some subject. And after I decided to make the change, they called me up and said, would you do an issue on digital photography? And I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And I had to call back 3 weeks later and said, I've been out of this for 6 weeks or 2 months. And already things have changed so much, I don't even know what questions to ask. So you better find somebody else to do it.
Right. Yeah, things change. When things start changing, they change really fast. And you have to learn to run and grow at just the same pace, or else you will get left behind. It's really interesting. Really interesting. Well, listen, let's talk about your book, because as I went through it, there's some amazing stories in there. There's stories about teacher. There's stories about kids who their last wish was to be a fireman. And that was really amazing. There's stories about kids walking across a river, and I'll let
I know that one.
You have to read the book to know what the rest of that story is all about. We're not going to give away everything, but you just had so many different stories of different parts of life, and your thought of the day email started the whole thing, and you did it to entertain, and you've been entertaining readers for over 20 years. How did this daily practice influence your personal productivity and routine?
Well, it was strictly a productivity thing that got it started. Okay. You have to think back in the 1990s. Internet was new, email was brand new, but most people still carried around a pager and a pocket full of quarters so they could, find a payphone and return calls. And I was managing a group of about 30 agents in the Midwest, and I needed to keep in touch with them. So I started sending out this thought for the day because they all had email. They just never watched it.
Right.
And so this got them to read their emails, and it was funny. So they shared some of these things with their clients. And the sales went up, okay, because, hey, people like to laugh.
Yeah.
And the clients said, hey, could you put us on the list too? There's no postage, so just add them to it.
Right.
And that was back in the 1990s. So that was actually 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
All right. And today I'm still sending out that list, and some of those original people are still on that list, getting them on a daily basis. But it's expanded to all over the U.S. It's expanded to Europe. It's expanded to Australia. I've got some readers in India. I mean, they're all over the place. I don't know where all they are. I just know an email address.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm sure the book's going to take off, because all you got to do is send out one email now and say, all of those stories are in one catalog or one book. And you're going to have a ton of people going out buying that book. And it's a really great collection of stories and information. And I love the way that you also were open to collecting stories or ideas for stories. And I think you still do that now.
Absolutely. I'm still looking for new contributions because, hey, 90% of the stuff in there is stuff other people provided. Yeah. And if you notice, the contributors' names are given, yes, and the date that it actually appeared.
Right.
And an awful lot of that stuff is from 2005, 2006, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the reason I called it 20 years of internet humor is because I realized the computers I was using back in the 1990s, where all these things were stored, I don't have those computers anymore. So I lost 10 years worth of material just because I never thought to save it. And the computers, they're so out of date now, I can't really retrieve anything.
Retrieve the information. That is amazing. That is amazing. Well, I'm sure, those who may have printed out those stories or whatever could mail them in to you and get them back to you if they could find them. But I think the stories that you were able to collect and have in there are really some amazing gems. Now, compiling the content for the book required you shifting through, like we just talked about, decades of material. Let me ask you, what strategy did you use to organize and manage this collection so efficiently? How did you do it?
I have two files.
Okay.
One file is a file by date. Okay. With, all of the dates out there and a listing of what the contribution was at the time.
Right.
And the other one is a file by title. Okay. Because I've given all of the stories a title. Okay. And then when I decided to put this book out, the question is, well, how do I do it? I have enough material to put a book out just on kids, or just on aging, or just on teaching. And I will once the whole series is done. That's an extra series coming out.
Gotcha.
A specialized series.
Yeah, right.
But what I did was, how can I get a good choice? And I thought the alphabet works. So if you look at the book, there's some A's, there's some B's, there's some C's, there's some D's, all the way down through X, Y, and Z.
That is really funny, because as I was looking through it, that didn't dawn on me. But as you're saying it, and I'm thinking about the book, I'm like, yeah, you're right. You organized it based on the alphabet, which is really hilarious. That's pretty smart. So, but obviously you have a ton of content, and I think, I will definitely jump on your email list, because the stories that were in there were very funny. I think the one where the lady, she was putting on some clothes and things were moving around and not fitting the way she thought they would fit. Because
how to buy a bathing suit.
Yeah, but it was the way you described it. That was really, really funny.
I went to high school with that contributor.
Okay. And then the guys who went to play golf on Christmas.
Okay.
It really expensive gifts, except the one, which I won't tell you what he did, but he didn't. It's a gift. But it was really, really funny. And so obviously humor has, and obviously you kind of already talked about this. And this was one of my questions that you've already kind of answered. And that was the idea that when you would send out the messages, and maybe you could expound on this a little bit more, you used it to motivate your team. But because of the nature, you really got them to laugh, and they started sharing this with their clients. Clients started purchasing more. The clients wanted to get on the list. and it just radically transformed your business, right? And I'm sure that whole territory just took off and probably became very noted in your organization for the amount of sales and the things that you guys were doing. So again, can you just any other observations that you have about just the impact that humor has on productivity?
Nobody ever bought something from a grouch. Okay.
I like that.
And if you're not smiling, if you're not ready to have a joke with somebody and, have them smile, you're not going to be a very good salesman. All right. And sales is what it's all about. Let's face it, every single person in history is a salesman, because you've got to sell yourself to your spouse, your future spouse. And once you're married, you got to keep selling yourself every day.
Right.
You sell yourself all the time. And I know so many people say, oh my God, sales is terrible. You don't want to be a salesman. That's just terrible. I don't want my little girl selling Girl Scout cookies because I don't want them to sell them. They're selling whether they want to or not.
Right.
I want to get a date to the prom. Well, I've got to sell myself. Okay. Selling is part of life.
You're so right. It's really important, because just to get a job, you got to sell yourself. To buy a car and get the price that you want, you got to sell your point of view or your budgeting concept or whatever you're doing there. To do that, there's so much that you have to do around persuading others to work with you, to hire you, to marry you. You got to sell yourself to your kids to get them to obey. Right.
The whip doesn't work too well anymore.
You get them to babysit the kids. And I mean, there's so many things like that. Now, one of the things that we're all going through is transition. And,
oh my God. Yes.
And transition can be really difficult. A lot of times people get depressed. They do a lot of, nefarious things, or they get into drinking, drugs, or other things. But you used humor to transition from being a journalist and broadcasting to finance. And you figured out how to make that shift. What was it about you, or the process of that shift, that you decided not to go on the dark side of a transition, but to make the most of it and enjoy life and laugh?
Well, that's just it. I don't want to be a grump. Okay. And nobody ever was a good manager when they were always grumpy,
Right.
And so, hey, if I can use humor, which is something I've always tried to do, things work out better.
Yeah.
And, one of the best things a person can do is wake up with a smile. And when you start getting my email tomorrow morning early, when you wake up, you can turn your computer on or your phone on, and there will be something to smile about. And that hopefully could last a good part of the day. And if it doesn't, you get the book out and read something else that keeps you going.
There you go. Yeah, it's really, really good. It's really.
And I've got to mention something else, that one of the reasons that I really started working on putting this out in book form is the fact that when you turn on TV these days, everybody's yelling and screaming, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and people need to laugh more.
Yeah.
And I can't do that with an email, so maybe I could do it with a book.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, having a good book in your hands and kind of turning off the boob tube a little bit and just kind of reading some good literature or reading some funny stories, it really is enlightening and really, really encouraging. Again, I really have enjoyed the book. Let me ask you this, with just the whole idea of digital communication. And obviously you started a lot of this in the process or the beginning of the digital communication with emails. How do you stay productive, even though, now there's so much that's coming at you from a digital standpoint, whether it's television, whether it's smartphones and all these things like that? How do you kind of remain focused and relevant for your audience and just kind of staying top of mind?
Well, most people won't want to hear what I say, but I just don't pay attention to it. I probably haven't had my television on in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
All right. I don't watch social media, other than the fact that when I get some message that says so-and-so said something about you on Facebook or something, I got to check it out. But if I'm on more than 3 or 4 minutes, it's really a surprise. And I took everything off my cell phone that gave me news alerts because I just didn't want to hear them.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I find that I haven't missed it. Now, this is somebody who used to read the Washington Post from cover to cover. I don't even get a well, I take it back. I get a weekly paper that's 4 pages long. Okay. I get that to see if any of my clients have died. But other than that, I don't even read a paper.
Right.
And that's terrible for somebody who made his living as a writer.
Well, it's interesting because, if something really bad happens, everybody's going to tell you anyway, right? The word's going to get out. And I think it's smart from the standpoint of protecting what you're taking in, because I think many of us struggle in life, not so much because we're trying to be in a negative state, but because we're open to hearing constant negativity. Like when you turn on the television, if you're watching news, and, my wife and I've watched television and I've listened to news. And the other day it was on in the background and we were talking, and it was just like one bad story after the next. We were like, what? And we just turned the television off. Just turned it off. It was like, oh my goodness, because it was really just one negative thing after the next. And it's almost like their way of kind of reeling you in to watch more and more and more of it, to get you addicted to negative stories or bad stories or things that are happening in your neighborhood that are not good. And, that wears on you as an individual, and that can shape your psyche.
Well, when I started working for a daily paper back in the 1960s, the early 1960s, the motto was, and it still is there, if it bleeds, it leads. Okay.
That's pretty much the way it is if the news is on. It's always leading with negativity. And I tend to watch very little of it because it's just, it taints how you view the world. It adds additional stress into your life. And picking up a good book, listening to something that's funny, listen to some great music, those things will give you life and kind of help you process through where you're going. Now, let me ask you this as we get ready to close out here. Reflecting on your extensive career, what key productivity lessons have you learned throughout your life that you could share with someone who maybe is in the process of going through a transition? There's a lot of people right now who had jobs a few months ago and
yesterday,
and they were just kind of told, oh, by the way, you're no longer working here, or this is not working out, or we're going a different direction, or we're replacing it with AI, blah, blah, blah. And, obviously your experience, you've seen all of that to some extent. How have you dealt with it, and what lessons could you lead for listeners to grab hold to?
Well, there are a couple of thoughts. First of all, plan ahead. Okay. Have some alternatives out there. Learn something new that you might be able to monetize, maybe something new that could be part of a new job. Yes, I've had a lot of things, but, I've had some major downtimes, basically 2 bankruptcies. Okay. And big ones too, that, hey, you got to start all over again.
Yeah.
And one of those was the fact that I was publishing a different book. Okay. I had a book out that had won all sorts of awards with the greatest thoughts out there. It was a guide to the interstate highway systems in 1980s and early 90s. Okay. It would tell you what was at the next exit. It would tell you, where you could get a Texaco gas station, where you could buy a McDonald's hamburger, all that stuff. And there was a volume for each highway. So you could just take I-95 down and follow your on the trip. And that I had a huge backing for. And then 2 things happened. We had Black Monday in October of 87, where the market crashed.
Yep.
And then we had something come out called GPS.
Yeah.
And so $500,000 went down the tubes because all of a sudden something that we never thought of crashed our whole idea.
Yeah, it just came out of the blue. Yeah, I think once GPS came out, I don't think I ever looked at another map again.
Yeah. So if I have 52 volumes of maps, what am I going to do with them?
Right. Right.
But, have alternatives available.
At that point, you had to, as an author, you had to buy all the materials and books and put them in your garage so you can go out and sell them. But if you invested so much money into all that inventory, then you're stuck with it.
Yeah. And at one point in one of the rooms in my basement, I had a diagram of every single interstate highway interchange in the entire United States. What am I going to do with that? But, as you saw, I did a lot of work with FEMA, with emergency management. And there's another good example where you have no idea what you're getting into when you go out on an assignment.
Right.
You just have to be prepared for whatever it is. And hey, never seen that before. Come up with an idea.
Yeah.
And one of the disasters I was working on was flooding in West Virginia, back in the hills, way back in the hills. Didn't get good radio reception. Transportation was screwed up, so there was no newspaper delivery. We had to get news out to people. How do we get news out to people on where to go for aid?
Right.
Can't use the radio. There's no newspaper. What we did was we printed the information on grocery bags because everybody has to buy groceries.
Right.
And when they buy groceries, which Trump likes to talk about now, groceries, what a great idea. But we put the disaster information on grocery bags so that they could get the information. You have to change with the situation.
Right. You got to be flexible. You got to be adaptable. You got to constantly look for what's next. And then what idea that's out there that you could take advantage of or leverage for, where you're trying to go. Bill, this has been a great conversation. Again, I really love the book. I thought it's hilarious. There's some amazing stories in there. As you can tell, I have a few that stuck out to me that we didn't get and talk through in detail, but I would definitely say go out and get the book. And the book, again, the title is 20 Years of Internet Humor, Volume 1, Bill Williams. Bill, where can someone learn about you and get on your email list and get your book?
They can go to my website, which is www.internet-humor.com. I need to have a hyphen there between internet and humor, or it goes into a dead file.
Right.
But I wasn't thinking when I set that up, but
but it works. It
worked. I also have one that says 20 years of internet humor, and it gets you to the same place, but I don't publicize that one too much.
Right. Right. Well, I'm sure.
And that,
types in the name of the book, that will come up and they can click on it and go right.
Right. And yes, they can get it at any major bookstore, Amazon, what have you. It's available in printed copies. It's available on ebooks. It's out there. So, and I might as well toss one more thing out. Just this past Saturday, I got word that the book received a 5-star award from Readers' Favorites contest.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. Again, it's a great book. It's very humorous, a lot of interesting stories. And I can't wait to start getting your emails and then to check out the other books. I'm definitely sharing this one with my wife because she loves those kind of stories. Again, a lot of funny stories. Bill, thanks so much for being a part of the Productivity Smart podcast. And I'm grateful to have you on my show.
Gerald, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.